Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and today's first impressions video focuses on this. Airfix's 1:35 scale German light tank, the PzKpfw 35T, which actually isn't a German tank at all. It was designed and built by Skoda, and obviously after Germany had access to those factories, they took on their tanks. And as a light tank, it saw action in Poland and France and one or two other places throughout the early parts of the war. Now, this kit was released by Airfix in 2019. So as an Academy kit, it was released as a new tool in 2013. And then in 2015, they updated it and changed some parts. And that's the version that we've got in this box. So it's a relatively new kit. So I'm not expecting to see any rubber band tracks or anything like that. So as a red box, we've got the normal layout. We've got two paint schemes here, one which appears to be German, one that appears to not be. We'll understand that better when we look at the instructions. When we look at the side, we've got the usual sort of warning information, contact details, so on and so forth. And then if we look down here, it says made in Korea, so we know it's the Academy kit. It's age 8+, as all Airfix stuff is that doesn't have etch. And then on the sides, we've got the same information that we've got on the top. And then, as always, we have our information. So there was 2 flying hours with this. It's skill level 2. We've got a list of our paints common to both paint schemes A and B, and then what you need specifically for A and specifically for B. So it tells us we've got 2 paint schemes. One is the Panzer Regiment in Poland in 1939, and one is the 1st Tank Battalion 1941, but under Slovak army rather than German army. So we get two different versions under the influence of Germany. There's a little bit of history telling us that it was saw action up until about 1942. Opening up the box, we find we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags of sprues. Some of them have individual sprues in. Most of them appear to have 2 sprues per bag. And then we've got our Airfix style instructions and what appears to be a separate paint list and sprue map. So looking at our sprue map first, we can see that we've got this sprue here, which I think that's been cut off and is loose in the bag, to be honest. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sprues in total. Covering the build. There's no bathtub hull or anything like that. It's all slab side build it up, which I've got to say I prefer. Then we've got our 2 paint shout outs. So in the usual Airfix manner that we're all accustomed to these days, we've got profiles showing the camouflage, showing the decal positions, and there's not a lot of decals to go on. And then our list of Humbrol paints at the bottom there. And then we have this second paint scheme. Even fewer decals. Quite a nice little camouflage scheme though, that isn't it? And again, our Humbrol colours at the end. So that's nice and clear and easy to understand. Looking at our instruction sheet, what we've got is an A4 fold out style manual rather than the usual stapled version that you get in an Airfix tooled kit. But the format on the front sheet, at least, is the same. Gives you the same information, gives you a little bit of history, and the image from the front of the box, which looks quite cool. And then as we turn over, we have the same assembly instructions information and the common Airfix key, although that's not a usual one, I don't think. And then immediately as we look at the instructions, as I fold this out, we can see that actually we are then reverting to the original Academy instructions. We can see that from the start we are building the bottom of the chassis of the tank. There's no interior to this, so don't think that that's some form of bulkhead and you could put the interior in. That'll just be to support and strengthen the upper part of the tank. So we're building up the side plates there and the front and end plates. Lots and lots of rivet detail by the looks of it. A little bit of drilling needed, but it's not telling you what size drills to use. So again, Airfix would normally tell you that. And no doubt there'll be some little depressions there. So we'll have a look when we look at the parts. Then we're building up the drive sprockets, idler wheels, and then we're building up our suspension system with all the wheels on. So lots and lots of wheels to put together in a sort of a roller type fashion. Then as we plop over to step 3, we're putting these sub-assemblies on with the return rollers going in at the top. I'm guessing that it's a rear-wheel drive tank by the looks of it. And there you're seeing how that part goes in, which is to clear any muck and stuff out of the drive sprocket. Then you can see that we've got in step 4, the tracks are link and length. So that should be nice and easy to paint, nice and easy to assemble. You can see there we've got individual links putting together the main link. So it should all fit nicely and have a nice sag effect that's realistic, that you're not having to create yourself. Okay, step 5 has us putting the upper hull on and the back plate. Again, more drilling, and then we've got the side fenders going on there as well. So that all looks nice and straightforward. Gives you a little reference picture there for the back end of the tank that you can't see in that shot. And we're also putting in the driver figure if we wish. And then step 6 is painting the driver. So that's a bit back to front for me, but there you go. So we've got 2 figures, a driver and a commander who's standing up. So no doubt will go in the upper turret hatch. So step 7 has us putting together some smaller parts, lights, machine guns and that sort of stuff. And we have some sub-assemblies in there. So really that's step 7 and that's step 8. And then we have some options for open and closed. So open, obviously, if you're going to put the figure in, because his head will be popping out of there. But bear in mind, you're not going to see any detail in there. So you probably want to have a look at how much you can see when the figure's in there, and maybe darken the inside of the tank so nothing can really be seen. So a little bit of thought will be needed about that before you actually assemble it. Step 8, and we're building up the jerry cans, and then there's 2 different types of mounts for the jerry cans, and then the jack block appears to be going on top there. We also have the Pioneer tools, and we can see some colours being shouted out, gunmetal and wood and so on. And then in step 9 we've got the jack, what looks like the exhaust to me, the rear lights and tow hooks. The jack is made up of 3 parts, so sort of a standard plastic jack, I would think. I'm not quite sure what that is. Is that? Is that a horn, or I don't know what that is. Okay, step 10, and we start focusing on the turret, and we can see that we've got what appears to be a turret that builds up from several parts, and here is our sort of vision ports. Now, I don't know whether there are supposed to be glass vision blocks in there, or whether it was just opening, so a little bit of research would be needed. If there should be glass in there, because clearly the kit's not adding any clear plastic parts, then we could always glaze those from the back with some crystal clear or similar. And then we have a hatch lid going on the top, which is got an air vent built in and bits and pieces. So and what looks like a pistol port and stuff. So quite a lot of detail on there, so hopefully that's all picked up on the plastic. And then our front main gun with a lighter machine gun at the end. So this isn't a heavily armoured vehicle at all. Obviously we can have this open if we wish to show the figure. It looks a bit simplified, the hatch mechanism there, the hinge mechanism, but I'm sure once painted up it'll look okay. And then we can put our commander figure in, which will look nice, I think. And what we do is we put it in and then rotate it. So I tend to cut the tabs off because what you find is it sort of clamps it down, and then you're scraping paint and all sorts. And it can be a bit stiff, and just cut the tabs off. It's a lot easier, and then you can position the turret as you want. Step 12 gives us some options. We're looking at the tow rope here, which is made from thread and a couple of supplied eye loops. So you're then going to have to paint it up in what is being suggested as 53, which I think is gunmetal. And then we've got something going on there, not quite sure what that is. Maybe it's a stop for the hatch opening or something like that. And it does give you the length to cut it, so that's handy. So interestingly, you've got two different lengths depending on which option you go for. So this option is if you want to have it wrapped around the front, and that's all dependent on whether you want to put these additional jerry cans on. Now, it's not telling you that you should do that with scheme A or scheme B, so again, perhaps a little bit of research might be required. Who use these and when, and that will perhaps dictate what paint scheme you're doing. So for me, that's one of the first things you're thinking about. Am I going to do that? And if so, which paint scheme am I going to do? Actually completes our build, so 12 steps, which doesn't seem much, but there are a number of sub-assemblies within those steps. So if Airfix was doing this, you'd probably have 30 steps, I would imagine. But the instructions seem quite clear. The pictures are nice and big and blown up, and they're easy to follow. I have no problem with these instructions. There is some paint shout-outs, and then obviously we've got our paint reference. Just a little note here is when you look at the paint reference sheet, it doesn't depict the jerry cans on the vehicle at all, either the side or the rear ones. So the paint scheme isn't going to help you decide what you're doing. So you will have to do some research. Decals next, and these aren't cartographed. They're not to the usual Airfix standard, and actually they're quite thick and chunky. I also think they're quite glossy as well. Certainly you can probably abandon those ones and paint that on yourself, and that would look a lot better. My gut feel here is possibly swap these out for aftermarket ones. Whether they'll go down okay or not, I don't know. But and there's not a lot of extra decal film or anything around them. They just feel quite lumpy. And it could be that with some clear coats we can sort that out. But yeah, my gut feel is you might want to look at doing something different there. Okay, Sprue A deals with the hull. And we've got this separate upper hull piece that's all moulded in one, and then we've got the lower hull, side plates, and what I think is the rear plate. And as I look at this, I mean, it's lovely and crisp, as we'd expect from a relatively new tooling. Lots and lots of lovely rivet detail on there. Now, whether it's in the right places and stuff, I don't know. I'm not going to count them at this stage. I might if I wish to when I'm building it, but again, I might not. But it certainly looks right. It's lovely and crisp. Some nice detail there along what will be the under edge of the mudguard, so it's nice to see that. Some nice detail around our return roller mounting points. No sink that I can see. Yeah, that all looks okay. And then as we look at the upper turret, upper hull I should say, again we've got lots of nice raised rivet detail, some screw detail there around that little slit there. We've got all sorts of fastener heads we can see on the front face. Again, really nice. Under wash this will look really, really nice. Unfortunately, we've got closed, moulded in doors, and not everyone will like that, but we don't have an interior in this, so not a biggie from my point of view. Yeah, that all looks good, doesn't it? Sprue B now, and that is dealing with mainly the turret and the figures. So we've got the turret base there, we've got the hatch lid, the front glacis plate for the gun mounting, the gun itself, which does have a hollowed out end, so that's quite nice. And that's also part of the gun. We've got, not quite sure what that is, it almost looks like one of the lamps. Then we've got our these are the viewing ports, and I thought they were hollow when we looked at the instructions, but they're not, they're solid, so we'll have to paint them and varnish those. Probably the easiest way of going about those. But everything's nice and crisp. There's some nice detail on some of these parts here, and again, fastener detail is all there, and same on the turret lid. We've got a couple of depressions for a handle, I guess. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with these at all. Then when we get to the figures, that's a slightly different story. There's quite a lot of heavy seam on them for a start off. Not that that's major, but there's something that they don't quite look natural in some way. They're a little bit, I don't know, it just doesn't quite look right. I'm struggling to find a word there. Under paint, these might well come out okay. It's got all the detail that you want, the badges and the tie and stuff. The same there with the belt detail and what have you. I'm not so worried about the legs. You're hardly going to see them if you're going to see them at all. The arms you will see, and they don't look too bad. And the hands look okay as well. The main problem is with the heads. So there's some lovely expressions on these faces, and particularly this guy here. He looks very intensely at work, doesn't he? It's the headphones that's causing me an issue. Because they've been moulded straight on, you've got a lot of plastic in between what would be a gap normally. So I would like them to have been separate, or at least the headphone connector at the top separate. So I might try and remove that, take that off, and put a little strip of plastic card or something like that on to improve the look of that, and that'll allow you to get in and clean up at the sides of the hat and stuff. So that'll add a little bit of realism if you can do that. Otherwise, you're relying on some black or dark paint there to make that look okay. I think you might struggle a little bit. Although I do like the facial expressions. So, yeah. And the hats don't look too bad either. So, no major issues with any of that, really. Sprue C looks like a little standalone sprue, and possibly this is the new parts that were added by Academy when they updated the original release in 2015. And to me, that all looks like the mounting points for the jerry cans. So we can see we've got some little wing nuts there. If we can get this to focus, you can see there's some tiny wing nuts there. Otherwise, it's just fairly flat plastic, so you're relying on a little bit of weathering to bring some life to that, I think. Then we have the turret top. So all moulded in one. It's lovely and crisp. Easy to clean up the gate there. Yeah, that's that. As long as everything fits, I can't see that there's any problems with that. Lots of rivet detail. I think that looks okay. Sprue F now, we have two of these, and as you can see, we're primarily dealing with the suspension and the wheels, and there's lots of them. I like what they've done here. The connection points are all on the tips of the teeth, so when you come to clean that off, that'll be nice and easy. Yeah, there's no real issues with seam. I'm looking at these wheels now, so thought we might have some seam cleanup on the tyres, but it doesn't appear that we do. Everything's really crisply moulded. It's very nice, and I must say the plastic is really hard as well. Some nice detail inside the return rollers there. You can see the fasten detail, which is what we're looking for. And then we've got the spring suspension there, and that is lacking a little bit. There is no individual springs visible there. How visible this be, I don't know. There is a little bit of sink in there as well. You can just about see that little sinkhole. It's tiny, but won't be easy to fill up, and it appears to be only on this one set, not that one. I think we've also got sink there by the looks of it as well. So we can see the individual springs from the top down, but not on the side. So it might be, well, I think it'd be a tricky task to describe that in, just because of how many there is in such a small space. So we'd have to look at this when we come to build it. Everything else looks really nice and crisp though. Detail is clear. And we've got the eyes there for the towing, and that looks okay as well. Small injector pin mark to clean up, but nothing in the grand scheme of things. This is just going to be a case of remove it from the sprue and put it on. It's going to build up really nicely. You just get a feel for it when you look at lots of kits like I do. You get a feel for what's going to go together okay and what's not. And this, I think, will be a nice, easy build. Okay, we are on Sprue E now, and we also have our towing cable in here. And when I look at that, that's going to look all right. Painted up, that will look the part, I think. So no issues with that. Looking at the sprue, we've got, well, that's our internal part for stiffening the hull. We've got our mud guards, back plates, the jack and exhaust, some of our tools, various bits and pieces that are going on the outside of the tank. So quite a lot of parts there, but again, it's all very crisp, no issues with sink or anything like that. No flash really. I don't think we've seen any flash, have we? The jack block is a little bit bereft of detail. There's no wood grain marked on there, but then there's always the debate about, is the wood grain over scale when you put it on? So you take your choice, don't you? Some of these parts, like the lamps here, they'll have to be removed very carefully because of where the gates are and damaging the part, but in the main, everything is well conceived. I think we've even got a little bit of slide moulding going on here. You can see all these openings, so that's nice to see. Yeah, no issues at all. Very, very nice. It's going to be a nice little kit, this, built up. We do have some cleanup to do underneath where we've got ejector pin marks on these fenders. They will be visible, particularly some of these are raised, so there will be some clean and fill there. But I think that's probably the most work we've had to do on the whole thing in terms of cleanup. Sprue H, we have 2 of these, and they're dealing with our Lincoln length track and our jerry cans. The jerry cans have some nice detail on them. You can see there's markings there on the cans, which is nice. For me, the crosses look a little bit wide, but it's not a big issue. Separate filler tops and separate handles, so they'll look the part when done and painted up and weathered and what have you. The tracks, obviously they're not handed, so they can use the same track format on both sides. They look quite nice. The track horns, I don't know whether these were hollow in real life or not, but they're certainly not on the kit. But they look lovely, and this here with the little track sag looks really nice as well. Yeah, no issues there at all. Very crisp. No flash in any of these openings, so that's all good to see. Very nice. Right then, aftermarket. There's a couple of aftermarket items that I've got for this kit, and we'll just quickly go through them. And the first one is some pre-cut painting masks from Edward. And what these are slightly different to the paint masks that you might be familiar with, the yellow tape ones, which are basically die-cut tape. These are vinyl, which means that they can be reused with care. And these are actually German crosses. So I made the comment that the Decals look like, you might get away with them, you might want to think about replacements, but nothing looks more like a painted on look than something that's painted on. So I've bought these, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see in the light, but we'll have a go. There's lots and lots of different crosses on there, and basically you've got all sorts of options, from just a solid white cross, which is a couple of rows here, to the more familiar black cross with the white edging, of which we've got several there, and variations of them, and there's even some strips here at the bottom, so you can mask off your own sizes if you want. And what we've got, if we look at the instruction sheet, we've got something that shows you how to go about it if you're doing multiples, where you're doing the black and the white. So these can be applied to a whole host of Second World War German vehicles. And it does take you through it step by step, showing you how to go about it. So for me, this is quite a flexible set of masks, because with care they can be used more than once. So we'll be using those on this model. They're not expensive, and they give you some nice options if you want to do something slightly different. It also means that, well, we've got all those rivets and maybe we've got a lump or two, we're not going to have to deal with settling, we can just mask it and paint it. So that will be interesting to see. I've never used vinyl masks on a vehicle before, only on aircraft. Actual vinyl itself feels like it's not too thick. It comes on a well presented sheet, so got no worries that it's going to get damaged. So yeah, I quite like this, but I've yet to use it. So I also have some photo-etched. Now this, again from Edward, is a set for the Academy kit. Well, we know that we've essentially got the Academy kit, so this should work nicely with what we've got. So let's see what we get in the photo-etched set. So we've got 2 frets of etch, and instantly we can see that a lot of it is focused on the mud guards. Let's have a look what we've got. So we've got 2 sheets of instructions. Have a look at the instructions first. And we've got some added detail being put onto the suspension arms there. And then we appear to be making some form of box with a catch and a padlock, which is going onto, looks like it's going onto on the top of one of the wheels there. So yeah, so that's interesting. Then we've got where some replacement parts there for the front of the hull. We've got new hinges going on. Looks like we're removing parts of the plastic part and then adding some photo etch on top. We've got improvements to the lights, various little lifting hooks and fittings that are missing from the model being added. So those are nice little touches. They're going to really add to the end look of that. That thick plastic plate that we saw is being replaced by something a lot thinner. Then we can see here an instruction on how to modify the etch to give it a realistic look, and I really like this approach. I've done it a few times on mud guards, and it really does look great when it's done. You just have to make sure you use the right type of pen. But yeah, it's a really nice effect. So basically what you're doing is you're pushing into these grooves, and that makes these become dome shaped, just like the real thing. It's a really good way of doing it. As we flip over, we can see that the mud guards have got some internal detail going on as well. So what I said was quite a nice little detail actually on the plastic part. We're actually removing that to put the photo etch in, which will give us detail on the top edge as well as the side edge. So I see why they're doing that. So there's all sorts of little frameworks that are going in to make it a little bit more realistic. You will have a relatively good view in there, so that should be nice detail being added. Little supports at the front, so a lot of it around the mud guards, and putting those together. And then we've got new latches and mounting points for the Pioneer tools, which will improve things immensely. Straps and what have you, even a side profile there showing you how to put them on around the 2 handles there, so that's really nice. And strapping around the jerry cans, which will also add a huge amount to it. Still don't know what that is, and I still think it's a horn, but we're replacing the mount for it. So yeah, some nice little added details. Let's have a look at what we get on this second page. This is just one-sided. The first thing that I see is that we're replacing the hinge that I commented on that I said looked a little bit basic. So we have some photo etch replacements for that, so I really like that. That's pretty much the only thing I spotted as a bit of an issue. We said that looked a bit basic. Holding down the jerry cans looked a bit basic. The etch is dealing with all of that for us. We've got more Pioneer tools being mounted and the jack. So some minor modifications, some finesse being added to the model through photo etch, mainly the mud guards, which will look a lot thinner for it, and also we're going to have those little tie down clips and bits and pieces put on the tank. So I think it adds a relatively small amount of etch to it, but will really lift it up a little bit. So looking forward to building this with this set. should be a really nice little kit. So there we have it. Airfix's 1 to 35 scale German light tank, the PzKpfw 35T. What are my first impressions? I think it's a lovely little kit. As tank kits go, it's not a big kit at all. It's definitely a small tank. It's not going to be difficult to build. Everything there is crisp. It's well detailed, but it's not excessively over the top with photo etch and resin and bits and pieces. So straight from the box, without any messing around with it, I think you get a really nice, fairly lifelike model as an end result. What we can see is that the photo etch that Eduard have provided are just going to lift that detail level up a little bit around here, around here. So the sort of areas where plastic's naturally going to struggle to mould in that detail, photo etch is going to make the difference. So the only thing missing really is an aerial, but we could do that with some stretch sprue. So again, we can take that from what's inside the box. I like the 2 paint options. It's nice to have something a little bit more unusual rather than just the German grey. These things were out of use by 1942, so there isn't a lot of options when it comes to paint schemes anyway. I guess a lot of people will be thinking Poland and France, but in all the blue, because of all the rivets, that blue-grey, you can really do some nice weathering effects with that, collect some dust and some dirt and really make that come to life. It's a nice little project. Put it on a cobbled street or a little patch of field and you've got a real nice little showpiece there, I think. So I really liked it. I'm sure there's not going to be any issues with the fit because we know it's Academy and so should go together fairly well. And everything in the box looks great. So for me, low lights, probably the Decals. And that's being a bit nitpicky in fairness. Highlights, I like the link and length track. The tracks look great. The moulding is crisp. There's no issues with it. There's not much in the way of cleanup. It's just cut it off the sprue, take your nub off, stick it on. What's not to like? It's a great little kit, and if you're in the market for one, absolutely consider this. It's not an expensive kit either. It's one of the cheaper 1/35 scale kits that Airfix do. So you can pick this up for around about £30 to £33, something like that. So not an expensive kit as tank kits go, and yeah, nicely presented. So I hope that was useful, helpful in some way, gives you an insight into what you get and what the quality is in the box. It's not an old kit by any stretch of the imagination, so it will deliver what you're looking for. Thank you for looking in, everyone. Take care, enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.